It's amazing, isn't it? This water. Water really is amazing. Now, before I go on to tell you why, I perhaps need to say that being a bishop was never part of the plan. In fact, being a vicar wasn't even on the cards. Growing up, I wanted to be a research chemist. So forgive me if over the next few minutes I get carried away by the details about this most extraordinary substance. And what I want to do is just share a few things about water that, if I achieve nothing else, I hope will give you a renewed respect for what Albert Szent-Györgyi, who discovered vitamin C, called life's matter and matrix, mother and medium. There is, he said, no life without water. So here is my ode to water. Firstly, water reminds us of the generosity of God. God created the universe. He made stuff, matter, the things this world is made of. About 14 billion years ago, there was a big bang, and the whole universe, which was infinitesimally small, began to expand and expand till in the fraction of a second, it was bigger than a galaxy. And it's gone on growing and growing right up to the present day. Now, this universe was incredibly hot, but as it got bigger, it cooled down. And after about 300,000 years, atoms formed. And the universe was filled with hydrogen and helium. Then, about 100 million years after the Big Bang, the first stars were formed. Now, these stars are the kind of cosmic factories for the building blocks of matter. When the nuclear reactor at the centre of a star runs out of hydrogen, the star begins to die, and it starts fusing together elements to make bigger elements like oxygen. And out there, in the vast expanse of interstellar space, these two elements, hydrogen from the Big Bang and oxygen from stellar evolution, came together, and water was made. Now that's quite a recipe. Quite a process. Surely only a generous God would go to so much trouble to make water, to make all this that we can see, the vast expanse of interstellar space and this fragile Earth, our island home. But how did the water get from out there to here on Earth? Well, when the Earth was forming, comets were blazing all around the solar system. Now let's take Halley's Comet. It's a potato-shaped lump about 10 miles across with a mass of about 100 trillion kilograms, most of which is ice. So back in the day, comets bigger than Halley's Comet would collide with the Earth and they would dump vast amounts of water onto this planet. Now things were pretty steamy back then, but just over 4 billion years ago, the temperature on Earth had fallen far enough for water to condense. Clouds formed in the sky, and then there was a huge deluge as oceans literally rained down from above. The result is that 2/3 of the surface of the Earth is now covered by liquid water, and over 1/20 by ice. We call this planet Earth, but water would be a more fitting name. So we have this extraordinary gift of water. But here's the thing. Water itself is a most extraordinary liquid. It does not behave in the way that you think it would. Let me explain. Like most things, when water gets warmer, it expands. The same mass of water takes up more space, which actually is the key reason why our sea levels are rising. It's not predominantly because of ice caps melting, although that plays a part. No, it's because the sea is warming up and therefore expanding, and that's why so much of the world, and even of Essex, is threatened by rising sea levels. That means that the reverse is true. When water cools down, it gets more dense. The same mass of water takes up less space, and that's true right down to about 4 degrees centigrade, when water goes a bit rogue and starts expanding again. And it goes on expanding with the result that ice, frozen solid water, is actually less dense than liquid water. So what, you might say? Except it means that ice floats. You see, we just take that for granted, although I'm sure that the fish who are able to live under the frozen surface of a lake don't take such anomalies for granted. And these changes in the density of water cause a churning at depths of between 1,000 and 5,000 metres under the sea that moves warmer water into colder areas and so vitally distributes heat around our planet. Yes, the same anomaly also causes burst pipes in winter and huge fissures in rock faces and certain ocean-going liners to sink as, icebergs float. But it also seems to be vital to life on Earth, and it does mean that we can skate on a frozen lake without getting our feet wet. But why does water do this? Well, the Reverend Dr. Brewer, in his 1876 Guide to the Scientific Knowledge of Things Familiar, said that it is wisely ordained by God. God has made water this way. Now that may be, but indulge me. Let's have a look at the science of this. We all know that water is H2O. Each molecule consists of one oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms, but it's more complicated than that. So if your hands are the hydrogen atoms, your torso is the oxygen, and the arms are the bonds, then water looks like this. Hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. But actually it's bent. And that is because the oxygen has some spare electrons that it hasn't used in making bonds. So let's say that your feet are these unused electron pairs. Now they would be at an angle like this, so you end up with a tetrahedron. Do have a go if you would like. Now imagine that you are floating free and there are lots of other water molecules floating around, and your hands can grab hold of someone else's feet. When you do that, you make what we call a hydrogen bond. And those hydrogen bonds stick water to itself in an amazing way. So ice is a neat structure, almost like a crystal, with hands holding feet and feet being held by hands all over the place. But there's a lot of space in between the atoms. But as people begin to let go of each other, as the water warms up, so other water molecules can invade some of that space, packing more molecules in that cold water so that it's more dense than ice. You can put your hands down now and let go of other people's feet. So these hydrogen bonds make a huge difference. They bind water to itself much more than would otherwise be the case, which means that it takes a lot of energy to heat water up, more than you'd expect, which thankfully means that our seas do not boil and our cars don't overheat and our bath doesn't go cold in a flash. These hydrogen bonds also give ice crystals a special symmetry, which you'll see in the extraordinary patterns of snowflakes. And it's because of these hydrogen bonds sticking water to itself that small insects like pond skaters can literally walk on water. It's incredible. And even as a scientist, I want to sing a hymn of praise, not to water as such, but to the God who in making everything that there is made such an extraordinary substance without which life would be impossible. But here's the thing, like all God's gifts, we've made a bit of a mess of it. Because of what we are doing, because of human activity, we have places like Emilia-Romagna in Italy, where this year they have been devastated by catastrophic floods. The home of Parmesan cheese and balsamic vinegar and Ferraris, this beautiful part of our world is a place now where more than a dozen people died and tens of thousands of people had to leave their homes. It was the worst flood in Italy for over 100 years. Too much water. Why? Well, the blame rests at our door. Our continued burning of fossil fuels is leading to extreme weather events all over the world, of which what happened in Italy this year is just the latest example. And all the water is ending up at the wrong places. Too much in one place and too little elsewhere. Do you know the tops of the Alps were snow-free last summer? There was no snow last summer on these giant European mountains for the first time in recorded history. The UN Weather Agency's State of the Global Climate Report also mentioned the devastating flooding in Pakistan last year, the longest and most extensive heatwave ever recorded in China, and the continuous drought in East Africa that has displaced 1.7 million people last year. People in Somalia, Kenya and Ethiopia are seeing crops fail and their livestock die, all because of a lack of water. The fact is that 2/3 of the world's natural water resources are to be found in just 10 countries. But the inequalities are worse than that. Half the world's population has to do without basic sanitation. 1/4 of the world's population has no access to clean water. As a result, about 80% of all diseases and 1/3 of the deaths in developing countries are the result of contaminated water. And the truth of it is this: these people are dying not because we lack the means or the know-how to save them. No, it's because we have chosen to refuse to make saving their lives an economic priority. Worse than that, between 1950 and 1990, we saw a 3-fold increase globally in the amount of water we use. And by 1996, we were using over half of all the available water runoff. Now that means that soon, maybe in the next 10 years or so, if water use continues to rise in this way, the taps will run dry. We will be using more water than can be replenished by natural means. Water will no longer be on tap, as we say. Do you know that the average American uses over 100 times the amount of water as someone in Uganda or Burundi? Here in Western Europe, we use an average of between 100 and 260 litres each every day. And here's the thing, here in the UK, we use crystal clear water, a food quality product, not only for drinking, cooking and bathing, but for washing cars and streets, for watering lawns and parks, even for flushing the loo. And all this is before you consider the huge amount, about 30%, which in the UK is lost through leaks before it even reaches the tap. Perhaps the challenge is to take the waste out of wastewater. We have the technology to reuse so-called grey water and reduce our consumption. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That has got to be the way. Because in the future, the survival of our planet, the continuation of life on Earth, comes down to this extraordinary gift from God, this amazing, astounding, incredible substance, water. When Jesus met a woman at the well, he talked of giving us water that would become in us a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life. Elsewhere he said, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink." Jesus knew that there is a link between water and life. He talked about water in terms of his own life within us. He likened his spirit to water filling us, refreshing us, revitalizing us. There really is a link between water and life. As W.H. Auden once said, thousands have lived without love, not one without water. It's interesting that when Jesus talked about himself, he made connections with everyday objects, bread, light, water. Yes, because we need these things if we are to live. Everyday things they may be, though, but ordinary they are not. It's amazing, isn't it, this water? Water really is amazing.